Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
All right, Eric Morin, Dental Wealth Podcast, the only podcast committed to keeping dentistry in the hands of dentists. I've got a great show for you today. I want to talk about a concept. It's a concept that I share with my clients often, and I think it's something you really got to think about. If you're going to create and use a dental practice to create a phenomenal amount of wealth, then you really need to know what you're measuring. What I say by that is I tell people that you get what you measure. And if you're listening to this right now, and unless you're driving down the road, I want you to just write down you get what you measure. Because if you understand the concept of measuring, that you can actually, believe it or not, make a mistake by measuring, because it actually matters what you measure. I always tell people, I say, I've got a surefire way that I can help you absolutely every single day lose weight. It's like no magic pill. There's no secret formula. There's no book you have to buy. It's this simple, which is if you get on the scale every single morning. So if you were to stand on the scale every single morning, you look at it and you measure that, believe it or not, you'll make different decisions. And creating wealth is the same thing. One of the things I tell people is that if you want to have a larger bank account, if you want to have more money, all you have to do is measure it. So how often are you actually looking at your bank account? How often do you look at investment accounts? How often are you looking at reduction in debt? How often are you looking at the things that matter? If you want to have a great marriage, measure it, right? If you want to have a great relationship with your team, you need to measure it. And then you got to be careful, because when you measure something, the inherent problem to measuring is that oftentimes we're not measuring something else. So what great organizations do is they have different people measuring different things. So I'd ask you this question. In your organization right now, who's measuring what? And are you the only one responsible for making measurements in your practice? Because if you think about this, if you're the only one in your practice that's making measurements, if you're the only one in the practice who's actually looking to measure, how likely is that to stick, right? So how likely is it to stick if you're the only one measuring? So what you got to do is you've got to actually start measuring different metrics. And I'll tell you, it's not about growth too. A lot of consultants come in, a lot of people in this industry come in, and maybe it's new patient numbers or maybe it's growth. And so they'll pound and pound and pound that you've got to, maybe you get new patients every single month. And I'm certainly believe in that, but you have to understand maybe you're not measuring something else. Back in 2011, Krispy Kreme Donuts filed for bankruptcy. And it's kind of an interesting story because of the fact that the company expanded too fast. See, this concept that growth is always good, and nowadays it's like a punchline, right? It's like every single person that I talk to says I'm buying 2 practices or 3 practices or 4 practices, and it seems like this constant narrative of that you've got to go bigger and bigger and bigger and expand. But do you? Right? Is that really the end all of be all? And I'm not saying that you might, maybe that's part of your vision and your goals and what you want to accomplish, but I will tell you, you get what you measure. And so if you're measuring growth, you might get growth, but what else are you missing? See, what if you're measuring growth, but you miss team morale, right? So one of the things I always tell people is like, got to be careful when you get too far measuring off on numbers, because before you know it, and I was just at the Hinman Dental Convention a few months back in Atlanta, and I saw this, it was like a dashboard, and the dashboard had I think it was like 40 dials on it or something. And I think it even measured when, the temperature in the room, like how that affects hygiene productions, right? And I just kind of laughed, and I thought, well, these people aren't even measuring new patients, and yet, you got 45 dials for people to measure. And so I think we go back to first is like, let's make sure we're measuring the key metrics. And I've got my book here today, Dental Wealth, and I was kind of opening it up when I was thinking about this topic, because this is something I'm always looking at. So I'm going to compare 2 different practices. So let's take practice A. So practice A is focused on profit margin. So they're with their accountant all the time. The accountant's constantly hammering profit margin. And so they're thinking to themselves that, that's what I've got to do. I've got to make sure my profit margin's where it needs to be. And so they just got back from the Hendon Maybe 2, and they're like super excited because they heard about the ideal number for profitability in their dental practice. So they've been persuaded that profitability is the key determinant of a successful practice. So what they want to do is they don't want to focus on growth. This practice says, hey, listen, the key determinant is not growth. Matter of fact, this practice might be like declining, right? And so they don't believe it's growth. They actually believe it's profitability. I had a dentist tell me one time, he said, I want to be the most profitable dentist you have. And I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. Because that actually means you're probably missing somewhere else, because you can increase profitability, but also decline in revenue. Let me say that again. You can increase profitability and decline in revenue. So what you got to do is you have to be careful on that. So let's just say this practice A, it's all focused on profitability. It's not willing to invest the additional revenue. So it has additional revenue, but it won't invest that because this person went back and their accountant told them that, hey, listen, if you want to increase profit, what you do is you decrease expenses. So therefore, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to invest in marketing, and I don't want you to invest in equipment, and I don't want you to invest in team, and I don't want you to invest in anything else. So what ends up happening is it has no growth, right? Let's just say that it's not declining, but let's just say it has no growth because the additional capital, the additional money, like I've got a guy I was just talking to recently in Chattanooga, and he was telling me that, that they didn't want to hurt their profit margin by investing in marketing, right? They didn't want to invest in getting the people to know who they are because they would hurt their profit margin. But he's not thinking about the fact that the increase in new patients drives revenue, which at the end of the day increases profit margin, right? As long as the books are measured well. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with looking at profit margin. I don't, like, if you're taking that, please don't take it that way. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with measuring profit margin. What I am telling you is you got to be very focused and understand that if I'm only measuring profit margin, if I'm only looking at margin, what am I not measuring right now? And should I be measuring something else? And maybe you as the dental, owner, maybe you're looking at profit margin, but maybe somebody else is measuring growth, right? So let's say that practice A, let's say it has an annual revenue of $800,000 and a 30% profit margin. All right, so $800,000 with a 30% profit margin, okay? Now practice B is totally different. Practice B is focused on growing the practice. They understand that if they grow the practice, the more they grow the practice, the more wealth they create. The more they grow the practice, the more wealth they create. Now, I'm not just talking about monetary wealth here. I think it's important for you to understand that. I'm not just talking about monetary wealth. The larger the practice, the more scalability the practice has, the more ability it has to hire other doctors, the more it has to invest in team training, the more it has to invest in team. Like, you want the best of the best, right? So if you want the best of the best, you got to be able to do that. And you've got to provide and pay for those talented people. You've got to be able to pay for the things that you need. So as you grow the practice, I think of wealth as the ability to do the things you want. That's both in time and money. You have the ability to do the things you want, both in time and money. So the larger the practice grows, the more the ability, as long as it's created well. We want to measure, obviously, systems, but it allows the dentist. So this dentist is on practice B is focused on growing the practice and allows this person, because they're going to scale this business, they're going to increase their net worth. But you got to remember too, if the practice grows, your net worth, right? Your net worth is going to increase. If anyone's listening to this and doesn't know what net worth is, I kind of explained it to it pretty simply. So net worth is if you sold off everything you own. Everything you own, you sold it off, and then you paid off everybody you owed. You'd have a bag in your hand, right? So you and your wife are like hippies. You're gonna run off in the woods or something, right? And so you've got this bag, or you're gonna go to some exotic island somewhere, or whatever's your vision. So you sell off everything. Whatever's in that bag is your net worth. Well, remember, if we grow the practice, it's worth more money. And I think that's really important to understand. So this person looks at growing their practice, they're growth oriented, they understand scalability. And what ends up happening is they only have a 25% profit margin. Now, practice A had a 30% profit margin, but practice B had a 25% profit margin. And the reason they had a 25% profit margin was because they were taking that additional capital and they were investing it. An important thing for you to understand if you want to grow wealth is that you have to learn to invest additional capital. So what they did was they took the difference, they put it in the practice. And so what ended up happening, even though they had a 25% profit margin, they grew the practice to 1.5 million. So the question is, which practice do you want to be? So practice A at $800,000 with a 30% profit margin would be at $240,000, right, of profit. Practice B does 1.5 million, but only a 25% profit margin, but the profit's $375,000. So do you want 240,000 or do you want 375,000, right? So I need you to understand the number one need of a business is access to capital. You want to take your capital, you want to invest your capital so that you can have a return. This entire book, Dental Wealth, the reason I created this book was I wanted to teach dentists to learn how to use their practice, utilize it well. Don't sell it. Learn how to grow it. Learn how to scale it, right? So if we're going to keep dentistry in the hands of dentists, what we have to do as we're doing that is teaching you the amazing power of this asset. I want you to learn the power of this asset. I want you to learn what this asset can do for you. Like, you understand that so many people are getting their business advice from the wrong area and people telling them that they should just focus on profit margin. I'm not against profit margin, but I need you to understand that you get what you measure. So in your practice, if you have not created a leadership team, you need to do so. If you don't know how, you need to reach out to us so we can help. But you need to have a team of people measuring different things. You need to get together once a week. You need to go through those metrics and you need to talk about those metrics. You need to be talking about the numbers in your practice and why they matter. If you want to create wealth, which is the ability to come and go as you want, to practice when you want, to have the life you want and impact as many people as you want. Now, I was in a group of people the other day and I said, what do you guys want? And they all raised their hands and said, we just want more money, right? Well, yeah, there's more money too, right? The one practice, right? There was considerable difference between the two practices I just stated. As far as income, there was a considerable difference between the two. So I need you to understand that there's considerable difference between a growth-oriented mindset and mindset that helps you create wealth, it helps you create impact, that understands the power of reinvestment, that understands the power of real estate, that understands the power of legacy and legacy planning. And it's not coming from the financial advisor telling you to put money in a 401k. This is the most amazing asset you have. So as you listen to this week, if you're in front of something, I want you to kind of challenge yourself this week, which is challenge yourself to think about this. Now write this down. What am I measuring? Right? What am I measuring? And I'd write that down. I'd think about that for a moment and say, hey, what am I actually measuring here? And what should I be measuring? So maybe the second question on that is, what should I be measuring? And by the way, just a thought for you for a moment. I want you to understand that everything impacts everything else. Everything impacts everything else. Like, have you ever met a dentist who got divorced in the middle of trying to grow a business, right? You want to talk about a reduction in wealth. What does a divorce do to the reduction of wealth, right? Or personal issues or health issues. Maybe it's health issues. What does a disability do to your ability to grow wealth? So maybe as you're thinking through this and ask yourself personally, hey, for my health, what am I measuring? How about my relationship with my kids and my relationship with my spouse? My relationship with my community, my relationship with my team? Are you measuring those things? And I think that you need to understand the power of what you measure. So this week, I want you to focus on just that you get what you measure. And if you measure the right things in this world, I will promise you, you will create all the wealth, success, and impact that you've ever wanted. Guys, thank you for tuning in this week. I've told you in the past, if you do not have dental wealth, go to dentalwealthcoach.com. Get yourself a copy. Don't listen to this again without it in your hands. You need to have it in your hands. This is me putting my passion, time, and energy into you, investment into you. This is, what I care about. I care about keeping dentistry in the hands of dentists. Don't need anyone else selling off to corporate because they don't understand the power of a dental practice and what can it do for their family, their life, their dreams, the things they've always wanted. So go back and make great decisions. Make sure you measure the right things.